Welcome back to the Personal Insight Questions video series we're doing here at UC Davis with undergraduate admissions experts, where we're covering each of the prompts and giving you tips on how to answer these prompts. And today I'm here with...
My name is Robert Penman. I'm Executive Director of Undergraduate Admissions at UC Davis. I have been reading applications holistically for about 11 years, I think, total. How many have I read? I mean, probably in the north of 10,000 for sure. But, you know, I touch a lot of applications throughout the year, even if it's not a full read. So lots of experience with it.
So today we're covering prompt 3. Prompt 3 is, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? So Robert, in all your experience with reading the PIQs and all these answers, are there any stories that have stood out to you from students that chose to answer prompt number 3?
I mean, tens of thousands of applications that I've probably read over the years. I think the stories that stand out fall into a couple of categories for me for this particular prompt. I think there's the obvious ones where like a student has a very special talent, athletic, creative, artistic, scientific talent, something like that. And they really do a good job of explaining all of the work that went into developing that talent. I think the ones that even in that category that stand out for me are like when they go beyond just themselves and also are explaining how they've then taught and mentored others in that talent, right? So it's the growth, right, in that that skill or that talent, I think, that stands out. The other ones that stand out for me are students who maybe start with something that seems rather mundane, like I like to cook, right? And I'm a really good cook. And again, same kind of thing, expand on it. And it's not just cooking that becomes part of the story or that is the talent. It's really like I remember one that was like a baker. I think I was working at a different institution at the time, but she was a baker and grew her baking skill set to a level that was taking her family out of poverty, right? I mean, like, it's a really exceptional thing when you see someone who's 17 years old able to take their talent and turn that into a business, right? And to bring their family out of poverty. So I always like to see those two. Another one that really stood out to me was a student who was homeless and their talent was resiliency. Not that everything has to be a sad story, like I don't want to make it seem that way, but this is a real student, right? Homeless and straight A's, rigorous course load, and really honed in, or really let us know like this was their talent, resiliency, perseverance, right? That they had been able to muster the strength to keep things going at a really, really high level. I think that year that student got a Regents scholarship. I mean, like, it was pretty impressive, right, to read the story and to understand where the student was coming from, but how they did that, right? How they kept it going, how they developed this sense of not giving up and stick-to-itiveness, right? And yeah, those are the things. Those are the ones that have stood out for me over the past decade or so. They're pretty impactful. So
I have another question for you, Robert.
Yeah.
Any general tips that you have for students who choose to answer prompt number 3?
I think getting beyond yourself is always what I like to see personally. I won't speak for every reader, but what I like to see personally is how have you taken this talent and expanded it beyond just like your own world, right? Does that mean if you're an athlete, for example, are you mentoring other younger athletes? If you're an artist, have you been able to take your artwork and display it locally, statewide, nationally, internationally, right? Like each level of progression, I think, gives us more context about how impactful this talent really is. In the examples I gave of, like, you know, personal context and talent around the personal context. I mean, the student who was baking cakes, right, and turn that into a business to lift themselves out of poverty, lift their family out of poverty, I think is like a really exceptional example, but kind of demonstrates that it's not just about them. It's about the greater collective in some way, shape, or form. Others, I think that other tips that I have for this one is time commitment can also be really helpful to understand, particularly in those areas where it's like musical talent, artistic talent, like how much time are you really spending, right? Context is always key. Like the personal insight questions are about context, clarity, and depth, right? So sometimes it can be context, like we don't always know what it means to be the #1 lacrosse player in the state, right? Like we do, don't get me wrong, we do, but how much time did it really take you to get to that point, right? Like what's the effort that you're really putting into it?
Right.
Are you traveling every weekend to compete, right? Far from home. Those can be really helpful pieces of information. So make sure you think about what I, as the reader, may or may not know about your sport or about your talent or about your musical ability. Make sure that you're providing as clear as of background as you possibly can.
So are there any red flags or things that you think students should steer away from when answering this prompt?
I would never say red flags, right? Because like the way that we view holistic review is everything's additive, right? It's either added value or it's a missed opportunity. So missed opportunities, I think, are using something so simple and never like expanding it into something more complex, right? Example is my greatest talent is talking, and I'm really nice to people at my school. Wonderful, right? Like demonstrated concern for others. I love it, right? But why is that important to this application process? What else is there to that, right? Did you join Link Crew, for example, and become a mentor at your school, right? Like there's ways to use something that's kind of run of the mill and to expand on that and highlight some other component that you want me as the reader to know. But if you stop it like I like to talk or I like to cook and don't go beyond that, I think it's gonna fall flat and not really add any value to the application. So I'd steer away from that if I can. If I were a student, I'd try to steer away from that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for all the tips. I'm sure all these students applying are going to really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this episode of the Personal Insight Questions video series. Make sure to check out all our other episodes where we're covering each of the 8 prompts.